I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. The core group of the USMNT won't be in camp again until March for the Nations League finals. That seems like a long time away, so on today's show, I wanted to share 3 things to keep an eye on while you wait these next 3 months to see the team again. Number 1 is injury recoveries, and I want to start with Tyler Adams. So in Bournemouth's match over the weekend, Tyler started and went the full 90 minutes, which is an amazing milestone for him. I can't even remember the last time he started a match and gone the full 90 minutes. So he has just been gradually ramping up his minutes, getting his fitness back to where it needs to be. And just think, if he can now, over these next 3 months, start week in and week out for Bournemouth, go the 90 minutes most games. Imagine where he'll be in March for the Nations League finals. He'll be in a really good spot, and I and a lot of other USMNT fans, in fact, all USMNT fans, I would say, would be thrilled about that. Fuller and Balogun, he's back playing again after injury. He's played the last 2 matches now for AS Monaco, including over the weekend in their match. He started and went 68 minutes, so that's good to see. He was starting to get in pretty good form before his injury, so it'll be curious to see if he can regain that and just continue to build his minutes for Monaco. Gio Reyna also been back on the field after some injury. He's played in their last 3 matches. He's been coming on late as a sub, which is pretty consistent to what he's been doing at Dortmund over the last couple of years. And so, can he stay healthy now? And can he slowly start to get more minutes, because he's still not getting a lot? And could he potentially even earn some starts? It's gonna start with being healthy, getting some consistency, but really curious to see how he can do that, over these next couple of months. And then Serginho Dest. So back when he was injured, last summer, I heard him speak about January 2025 being his goal for getting back out on the field. Haven't heard about any setbacks in his recovery or to that timeline. I was watching their Champions League match, last week, and several times the TV, went to him. You could see him up in the stands, watching the match. So he's there. He's around the team. I believe everything's back on track with his recovery. So we'll be curious to see, when does he get his first minutes, with PSV, and then what does he look like? Because he's a really dynamic player that counts on a lot of speed, a lot of quickness. So how will that knee hold up? How quickly will he be able to get back to being the Serginho Dest of old? But think about it. If he gets back on the field in January, maybe by March, he is getting enough minutes to where he could get called in, for the Nations League finals. So number 1 is injury recoveries. Tyler Adams, Fuller and Balogun, Gio Reyna, Serginho Dest. Those are 4 players in particular I'm going to be keeping an eye on. Okay, number 2 thing I'm going to be watching for before March is the winter transfer window. Who are some players that could make a move? Gio Reyna is one. Again, he's coming back from injury. He's trying to get his minutes up, but we know that last winter he wasn't happy with his minutes, and he got the loan deal to Nottingham Forest. And you could argue that it maybe didn't work out so great. But will he want to get more minutes again? Will he be satisfied, or will he just be content with kind of getting back into the team at Dortmund? Ricardo Pepi, he's just been building so much momentum over at PSV. There's been some reports of some big clubs in the Premier League that are interested in signing him, that are watching him, keeping an eye on him, considering him. So will he go? I mean, I think he's in a good spot at PSV right now, but if one of those big clubs comes a calling and the price tag is right, maybe PSV and him will want to, take advantage of that. Personally, I don't think Gio Reyna or Ricardo Pepi will move during this winter transfer window. I think they are going to try to just kind of keep things stable at their club, see what happens. And depending on what happens throughout the rest of the season, maybe in the summer, they would be more aggressive towards pursuing a move. But I think for right now, I see them staying put. But they're two guys that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. There's also some MLS guys that I'd like to keep an eye on to see if maybe they move over to Europe, in the winter transfer window. MLS Cup is coming up, and after that, the season's going to be officially over. So it's the off season for MLS players. Which one of them could be trying to make a move over to Europe? Duncan McGuire is one guy I'm specifically looking at. He had his loan deal to Blackburn in the championship fall apart last minute due to some paperwork last winter. So we know he wants to go. We know there's clubs interested in him. Jesus Ferreira is another one. He had a transfer lined up to a Russian club last winter that MLS ended up turning down. Ferreira's had a lot of injuries this season, so he's not in his best form, doesn't have the best stats, but we know he's said he wants to get over to Europe. Is this the winter that he finally makes it over there? And then Brian Gutierrez from the Chicago Fire is another guy. I've read multiple reports that he could be a guy that could be going over to Europe in this next transfer period. So always curious to see which MLS guys are trying to make that move, in their career. So I'll be keeping an eye on that in the MLS offseason. I should say that winter transfer window, for most leagues, I believe it starts on January 1st and then ends either right at the end of January or like February 1st, February 2nd. I think each league is a little bit different, but for the most part, that January transfer window is going to be the month of January. Okay, so what's the number 3 thing I'm going to be watching for before USMNT gets back together in March? It's the striker position, specifically Ricardo Pepi versus Fuller and Balogun. I'm not counting all the other guys completely out, but I think Sargent, he's injured, and I just don't see him being in serious contention come March. Haji Wright, he's really been playing mostly on the wings for his club. So I don't really see him there. I really think when we're looking at the Nations League finals, who's going to be number 1 in the depth chart in the striker position, I think it's going to come down to Ricardo Pepi versus Fuller and Balogun. Now, Pepi seems to be building a lot of momentum at PSV. For now, Luke de Jong is still above him on the depth chart. The coach has consistently said that's how it is. That's how it's going to be. But Pepi, he does seem to be gaining some momentum there because he's scoring a lot of goals. First of all, he's scored more goals than Luke de Jong this year. Pepi's on 9, Luke de Jong's on 6, even though Pepi's played a lot fewer minutes and had a lot less starts than de Jong. He had, a hat trick recently. He scored the winning goal in their last Champions League match to complete that comeback. And meanwhile, de Jong is struggling a little bit. He has not scored a goal since November 2nd when PSV played Ajax. So he's at a month now without scoring for PSV. And so, yeah, I think, de Jong's a club legend. It's not going to be easy to unseat him. But I think you're starting to see them just not be able to hold Pepi back anymore. He's getting more minutes. I think that's going to continue to increase. And then he's also playing well for the U.S. men's national team. He's been scoring some goals since Pochettino took over, and so he's made a good impression on him. So I think he's in the driver's seat. But Balogun, like I said, he's back from injury. He really seemed to be warming up a little bit before he got injured, scoring some goals over at Monaco. And he has some big games coming up against some really big clubs where he's going to have a chance to prove himself. Monaco plays Arsenal in the Champions League next week. They're going to be playing PSG in back-to-back games right before the winter break, and then right after. One's just a regular league match. The other one is their Champions Trophy. And then also in January, they have a Champions League match against Inter Milan. And so Balogun's going to be playing in some really big games. Can he get some big goals in those games? That's one way he can kind of like stake his claim, for the top striker position for the USMNT heading into March. But I'm really curious to see how those two perform at their clubs over these next 3 months, to see who comes into that March camp, carrying the most momentum. So there you go. That's the 3 things I'll be keeping a close eye on before the USMNT meets up again in March. And yes, I know they are going to have a January camp as well, but that's mostly going to be MLS players. The core group won't meet up again until March. Thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X at FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.